What makes Pokemon unique? Generation 3. After the wild success of the first two generations, Pokemon went through some big changes heading into the third installment. The Game Boy Advance was alive and well and was already chock full of popular RPGs. Satoshi Tajiri had stepped down as director of the Pokemon series and took on the role of executive producer, while composer Junichi Masuda was appointed to directing the main series titles from here onwards. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire were released 3 years after the previous generation. At the time, the series' popularity was waning. Hardcore fans were looked down upon for still playing a kids game, and the Hoenn region was much emptier than expected. Although 135 new Pokemon were added, only 200 were able to be caught between the two versions. Considering Gen 2 offered 2 whole regions and nearly every Pokemon, it seemed like a step backwards. Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald did not have great sales compared to its predecessor, leaving the games to be overlooked by much of the fanbase. As time went on, however, Gen 3 grew a cult following for how different it was, and when the remakes were released in 2014, it brought newfound love to the Hoenn region. What makes the Generation 3 titles unique is how they add features that give the Pokemon more individuality, making these friendly creatures a lot more dynamic. Generation 3 added a total of 6 new features to the Pokemon formula. 1. Pokemon now have natures, which skew a Pokemon's stats to have one slightly above average stat and one slightly below the norm. Now even 2 of the exact same Pokemon could be ever so slightly different. 2. Abilities added a passive skill to each species of Pokemon that built on their personality. For example, Slakoth's Truant ability restricts it only to attack every other turn. This makes the Sloth inspiration a lot more true to life. 3. The individual values and effort values of Pokemon were finely tuned and easier for players to understand. Although they grew to more importance in later generations, the system introduced in Generation 3 is what even current games continue to use. 4. Ribbons added milestones and commemorations for what a Pokemon had accomplished in his lifetime. They even carried on throughout the games and makes transferring Pokemon through the generations a lot more nostalgic. 5. Double battles were introduced to not only give a lot of variety to the combat, but gave Pokemon synergy thanks to their types and abilities. Pairing up an Earthquake user with a Pokemon that has the Levitate ability is just a match made in heaven. This also allowed for multi-battles where 4 players could all battle at the same time. Then there are, number 6, the Pokemon contests, something that Generation 3 is most remembered for and even played a big role in the anime. These contests take away the effects of attacks in battle and gave them a contest effect instead. The competition pit 4 Pokemon against each other, where moves would be worth points, while some could take away points from others, and some just affected the flow of the game. Although it was a novel idea at the time, contests gave Pokemon more purpose. Even the strongest of Pokemon didn't perform that well in this context. Trainers had to specifically pick and prepare different Pokemon for contests. They needed a good variety of moves, eat a lot of Pokeblocks, and then take on the tough challenges that laid wait at the Master level in Lily Cove City. Although it wasn't required to beat the game, there's no doubt that trainers who earned these ribbons for their Pokemon were proud of their achievements. On top of all the other smaller features like secret bases, the Dex Nav, the time-based events, and more, Pokemon began to have so much more purpose to the trainers. There were more ways to battle, new ways to play, and new ways to love and remember all the Pokemon along the journey, and even into future games. Generation 3 is also the beginning of something new for the Pokemon series. The story that coincides with the traditional 8 Gym Badge challenge now had this new weight to the world of Pokemon. Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza were capable of destroying the world. Having these villainous teams bring the player to confront these monstrous beasts was a lot bigger than just meeting a crime boss. This was a big turning point in the series, and with the introduction of the first of the remakes, Fire Red and Leaf Green, Pokemon was on its way back to prominence. That is what makes Pokemon unique. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button, and if you'd like to see more videos that discuss what makes any video game stand out, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.